Let's paint a path through the trees. This image doesn't start off with a lot of sketching because I had a very clear idea of what I wanted the landscape to look like. The image is inspired by a photo I took of the rock garden in Cragside, a National Trust site in Northumberland, England. While I did have a photo to work away from, I ended up making a lot of minor changes to the landscape to fit the image I had in mind. Reference images are great to have, but that doesn't mean that a drawing or a painting will have to look just like it. When working with an image where there's a distinct foreground and background, I make sure to reflect this in the layers I use, meaning that the trees in the foreground were painted on one layer, while the background and the majority of the landscape was painted on a separate layer. That way I can move them around independently of each other, and I can also hide a specific layer when I need to. When adding colour, I use a lot more layers, though this might depend on how I'm working with that specific image. But for this image, the majority of the colour was added underneath the landscape layer, so the dark purple would be the darkest colour for these, though I also painted over these dark areas in order to add highlights and details. Of course, different shades of green were also painted over the foreground layer to create additional depth. Like a lot of other digital artists, I have a ton of different brushes, some that came with the software and apps I use, while some I have purchased. And I do have some specific go-to brushes that I love, but I decided to spend some time at the beginning of 2022 exploring brushes I don't use as often. And while I haven't really shared much of this exploration in my process videos, I consider a bunch of the images that I created in the first half of 2022 a continuation of this exploration, because it usually takes multiple images before I can decide whether or not I'm happy with a brush, because different images require different details and textures. This image was created in its entirety with only one brush, and my favourite thing about this brush is the texture, as it's a softer version of my regular go-to brush which comes from the same brush pack. However, after working with this brush for a while, I felt it might be better as an accent brush, as my regular brush is better at creating solid colours. This is also why exploring what brushes you have can be really useful. The brushes you try might not be your next go-to or all-round brush, but one that can be used to create textures and details you want. Thank you so much for watching. More process videos are up on my YouTube channel, and check out my social media accounts and my website for more of my work.